What's the dumbest thing someone has ever told you? I was going 30 miles per hour in a 30 zone. The police station is on the street, so I'm always super cautious there. Anyway, an officer pulled me over and claimed I was going 50. I got his dashcam footage. Clearly showed me not speeding. But part of the footage, you can see the police officer going 40 miles per hour to catch up to me. Someone defended the officer by saying, if you were really going 30, then why did the officer have to drive 40 miles per hour to catch up to you? I'm like, I'm going to assume you're joking here, but by some bizarre circumstance, that you're actually being serious. In order to catch up to anything, you have to go faster than it. If I was going 50, he wouldn't have ever caught up going 40. That they thought Mount Rushmore was a natural wonder. They literally thought it appeared in nature that way. Had a roommate that owed taxes 1 year, so he didn't file the return. He corrected his withholding, so he would get a refund the next year, filed that return. 6 weeks later he gets a note from the IRS that he owed from the prior year, and they were using his refund to pay it, and he still owed them for interest and penalties. His reply, they can't do that. They can. And they did. And their next step was going to be to garnish his wages if he didn't reply. My aunt argued with me that humans have 2 hearts, one on each side. She didn't know the difference between heart and lungs. We had a team lunch some years ago, and I ended up in a conversation with one of our account managers, a woman in her 30s who worked for a multi-million-pound company. She insisted that the sun was the same size/distance as the moon, and stars were asteroids falling to Earth. This was long before the whole flat earth idiocy kicked off, and to this day, stands out as the most astoundingly ignorant thing I've ever heard. I've been told by multiple people that fish aren't animals. When I was in high school, a friend was talking about being a vegetarian. I was confused because she had just eaten fish. She said that fish wasn't meat and another person there agreed with her. I asked if they weren't meat, were they vegetable or mineral? No good answer to that one. A girl told me she couldn't get a sunburn because there was too much wind. Same girl insisted she would become a doctor. I asked why she thought she couldn't tan or sunburn if there was a breeze with a clear sky and 100°F weather. She explained that the wind would cause her to not sweat, so she wouldn't tan. Kinda the same concept. I was showing a co-worker some nighttime sky objects. I pointed to a bright object, telling a North Dakota HS graduate that it was Jupiter, another planet. He asked, is it one of those things they sent up in the space shuttle? Early 1980s. Ron, if you read this, I'm sorry for laughing at you. Follow up. Later that night, when others teased him about this story, he replied, sorry folks, but I'm not a geologist. I don't get off the farm much. Had a teacher tell our class that it can't rain over water. She proceeded to tell us that if the clouds are over water, they will just wait until they were over land, so it doesn't waste water. If a cloud is smart enough to wait until it's over land, so it doesn't waste water, then it has roughly the same mental capacity as any random barnyard chicken, and therefore, we should be able to hunt, kill, and eat clouds. I'll bet they are high in calcium and full of life-extending fluorine. Fight me. Some people at my job were discussing what you were allowed to eat on Fridays during Lent. If you ain't religious, the rule is no meat on Fridays. And this one woman was arguing that you can eat chicken because it's not meat, it's poultry. At this same job, I overheard another person say that vaccines cause Down syndrome. Yeah, not autism, which is still incorrect, but at least it's the myth people go with. This person thought it caused Down syndrome. And the real kicker is, we work at a medical testing laboratory. We literally do a prenatal test for Down syndrome. You can't just come down with Down syndrome later. Once I was talking about the seasonal/weather difference between the US and Argentina with some coworkers, as I had traveled to Buenos Aires during our winter, but it was summertime there anyway. One of said coworkers asked, okay, so what month is it over there right now? So I paused and then had to explain to them that, although there's a seasonal difference, the calendar year/month still aligns with the rest of the world. Shortly after that, my other coworker, who overheard this exchange and happened to be from New Zealand, just looked at me afterwards, puzzled, and said, wow, I really thought they were joking. It was a serious question. When I was small, my father just concluded a conversation on the radio with someone in Australia and I asked why he said it was summer there when it was winter here. Further confused by a temperature of 30°C, he explained how south of the equator they get the opposite seasons. I was able to understand that because I sort of knew about the tilt in the Earth's axis change during the year. Me, being the little genius that I was, did some thinking on that and came to the only logical conclusion. They must celebrate Christmas in June and July 1st was their new year. I work in childcare. A parent got mad at me because I put their little boy in a pink diaper because they didn't pack extras. Despite several reminders, I was told I'm trying to turn their son gay because of the color of a diaper. Once had a co-worker acquaintance who was about to get married tell me he was already planning to cheat on his wife. Not that he already had someone lined up, but that he would find someone just to cheat with. Why? Because 50% of spouses have affairs and that, since it was him, it wouldn't be her. And yes, he was perfectly serious. I told him should he and his future wife both have affairs while my wife and I do not, then the statistic remains at 50%. Me thinks he just needed an excuse to have an affair. I'm a good drunk driver. It doesn't affect me that much. He was an awful driver when he was sober. We were in 3 at-fault accidents in the 10 months we dated. I can only imagine how much worse it was when he was drunk. I had a roommate for about a month before we kicked him out. Dude was a severe alcoholic and addict, and beyond the unpredictable and violent behavior, he was without a doubt the dumbest man I have ever met. On one occasion during a storm, he mentioned how crazy it is that lightning came from the ground. I was fascinated by his brain and asked him to tell me everything he knew about lightning. I learned that lightning is channeled from the ground through houses and shoots out of the chimney or an antenna into the sky. There was also no such thing as lightning before houses, as it didn't have a way to escape the ground. On another occasion, I walked into the kitchen to see our sponge had been poorly cut in half in an attempt to separate the abrasive part from the rest. A steak knife beside it. I was instantly amused and asked him what had happened. He then mumbled out like Ozzy that he had fixed it. As always, I immediately wanted to know more. He told me with great struggle that he was at the store and saw the 2 parts of a sponge sold separately and wanted to fix ours. Heroic. He kept flour tortillas on a plate with no cover on top of our fridge. When he'd eat, he would place the rock hard tortilla on a plate, put whatever on top, eat it all with his hands, and then throw away the tortilla. Every single time when I asked him what was up with the tortilla, he told me it was a garnish. He also, much to my horror, would microwave oysters and eat garlic without peeling it. This was 7-ish years ago, and I still wonder about him from time to time. It's dangerous to listen to your own heartbeat with a stethoscope. They said your heart will try to match what you heard, and that will in effect stop your heart. There was no explanation given when asked why medical personnel didn't have issues listening to patients with heartbeat irregularities. I worked in a city that has a high military population. We gave military discounts if you could prove you were active duty. We had a family come in one day, dad, mom, adult son, who had never been before. The dad read the admission board and said, "Oh hey, you can get a discount for admission," to the son while handing him the sign. He read the sign and said, "I swear to God, I'm not in the military, I'm in the army." All I could think was, good lord, they let you have guns. My friend told me she could get into an Ivy League school without even applying, just for going to some special high school. This is impossible, and she still thinks she's automatically getting into that school as well as getting half off tuition. Lol. I knew a compulsive liar growing up. He was awful. Ended up going to a community college with him where he openly bragged about how much student debt he had, which he claimed was in the hundreds of thousands, but that wasn't true. Anyway, this story took place while we carpooled with 2 other guys to school. While we talked about student loans, I actually went to a tour once to protest student loans. I was in a bathroom taking a piss, and who was pissing next to me? Dave Suzuki. We said hello, and he asked if I was there for the protest. I told him I was, and he said that he knew someone I should meet. So I walked with him, and next thing I know, I'm face to face with Stephen Harper, Canada's Prime Minister at the time. I explained my concerns to the Prime Minister himself, and he wrote me a check right there for the exact amount that I owed for student loans. I ripped it up and told him I wouldn't accept it unless he did that for each and every student loan in Canada. And that was the first time I met Dave Suzuki. This dude was dead serious. Might not be the dumbest thing on here, but I'm still mad as hell at this guy. He moved to Canada a couple years ago onto a piece of property next to us. He proceeded to cut down nearly every tree he had, including some large, old sugar maples that we knew to be excellent sap producers. He left maybe 5 young maple trees, all close to the road. We find they don't produce as well. We think it might be because of road salt. He tapped his 5 trees. The first time I met him, he said to me, I tapped my trees, but they are not running. They are just dripping. Holy crap, what an idiot. That's what a running tree does. You should have known that before you cut down all your best trees. You'd think if he intended to make some syrup for himself, he'd do some research first and actually keep some maples. I'm extra salty because this piece of property used to be so beautiful. Those large trees let just enough light into a meadow of snowdrops, wildflowers, and daffodils in the spring. It was straight out of a fairy tale. It's now an open field bordered by brambles. He's built the ugliest house and erected not 1, but 2 garages made of industrial shipping containers. Also, he threatened to shoot our dog. Needless to say, my family and I do not like him much at all.